East Detroit.
East Detroit.
East Detroit.
East Detroit.
From East Detroit.
Choose East Detroit.
The entire East Detroit.
Eastpointe is a city with a total area of just over 5 miles. On its southern border is 8 Mile and the northern edge of Detroit. But from 1929 to 1991, this city went by a different name, East Detroit.
Even when African Americans move into a community and help to racially integrate a community, there are growing pains that are associated with that. Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes. And there are people who moved to cities like East Detroit, now Eastpointe, other spaces in Macomb County like Warren, even Clinton Township to some extent, Shelby Township. There are white people who moved to those cities who were originally Detroiters. And there are probably several different reasons why they moved to those outer suburbs. Some it was for convenience, maybe making for a shorter work commute, so that could be part of it. But clearly a part of it, I've always felt, and research certainly show, that part of it was to get away from Detroit. And oftentimes what that get away from Detroit meant was get away from Black people.
In 1982, a group of East Detroiters organized to change the name of their town. George Larowski led the name change committee. He argued that it's better to emulate a prestigious community than a crime and slum city like Detroit. If my name were Hitler, I'd want to change that too.
One of the benefits, as I think some whites, far too many whites saw, was getting Detroit, the literal name Detroit, off the name of the hometown, hence going from East Detroit to Eastpointe. I think for a long period of time, certainly really beginning back as early as the 1940s, but after the 1967 rebellion, there was certainly an accelerated movement of white flight away from the city itself. And moving to, a lot of the communities I've talked about before, but not only moving away from those communities, not really even wanting to be associated with the city itself, Detroit, and the men and women who have been elected to lead it.
I issue open warning now to all dope pushers, all rip-off artists, all mothers. I don't give a damn if they're black or white, if they wear super fly suits or blue uniforms and silver badges.
I've heard anecdotally and researched white people misinterpret then Coleman Young's inaugural speech, where he advised criminals, whether they wore superfly suits or badges, to get the hell across 8 Mile. Many white people have misinterpreted that as Coleman Young saying to white people, get the hell out, go across 8 Mile, get out of Detroit. And so politicians have run on that fallacy. Gil Danello comes to mind. Gil Danello was a former state house member and state senator that represented a good swath of Macomb County, including then East Detroit. As late as 1992, then state senator Gil Danello was quoted as calling Detroit Mayor Coleman Young a criminal. And that then Governor Engler should remove Coleman Young from office. It's that type of hostility that has been carried out in our region for the last 30 or 40 years, and helped to create an environment where there are lots of white people, in particular in Macomb County, who believed in what Danello was saying and others, and wanted to disassociate the city, felt like it would be felt like they'd have a better quality of life if they didn't have the name Detroit as part of their city.
George Larowski had tried twice to change East Detroit's name before narrowly receiving enough votes in a 1991 referendum. The new name they chose was Eastpointe, and attempts to force association with the wealthier Grosse Pointe communities.
The comparison to Eastpointe to Grosse Pointe is huge. There's almost like no comparison to the two cities. Grosse Pointe is like loaded with money. They're both cities that border Detroit, but there is a vast difference between the two cities. It's known that if you live in St. Clair Shores, if you live in Grosse Pointe, that your family just has money.
But certainly the Points have been traditionally more affluent than certainly the city of Detroit, and certainly Eastpointe or East Detroit at the time. And so I think there was an aspiration to, if we can better identify, with the Points or other parts of the region, it would help us sort of shape the Detroit read, at least at that point, in our name. And so I think all of those things fueled the majority of the residents, voting to change the name of the town.
What's the matter with the name we've got? Yo, you motherfuckers make me sick. Thinking you're hip, but you don't know shit. Jumping all of my Grosse Pointe's dick. I can see you coming from very line. Don't wanna take back when you brought back alive. Eastpointe, Grosse Pointe, it's the fucking point. It's East Detroit to me.
And I don't know if our region is different than other regions. I've only really lived here, lived in a couple other spaces for short periods of time. But and this goes beyond race. I mean, we have, I think, a sort of kinship and connectedness with our schools, with our school districts, in a way that we don't have with, perhaps the municipal government, the local government or city. People connect with people based on where they went to school. I mean, it's almost, I'm talking like grade school and high school in a way that maybe others kind of feel about the colleges and universities they attended. And I can certainly tell you, as a Detroiter, you're sort of initially defined oftentimes about the school that you attend, the high school that you attended, because it sort of points out, and not in all cases, but it sort of points out where you grew up, in the particular city.
East Detroit, stand up. This morning I woke up, got dressed and headed out the door to East Detroit. This morning I woke up, got dressed and headed out the door to East Detroit.
So the school district didn't change right away. This was the municipal corporate name. The school district didn't go along. I think that there was probably a lot of back and forth going between residents in changing the name of the school district. It might cause school names to change. It might, I think there's a sort of real spirit and honor, I think, oftentimes that one has in the school that they, in the high school or grade school that they attended, that might have had something to do with it.
In 2017, nearly 25 years after East Detroit residents voted to rename the city to Eastpointe, the school district finally followed suit, a decision that was met with a mixed reception from students and residents.
I know a lot of people who were going to the high school at the time, they're like, that will always be ED. It will be ED to me forever. It'll never be Eastpointe High School. We will always refer to it as ED or East Detroit.
I can't forget about the name change, because at the end of the day, we are all East Detroit High School graduates at heart.
So I went to East Detroit / Eastpointe public school since I was in kindergarten, so kindergarten through senior year of high school. When the name change was going on, we didn't know about it until it was already decided. The students didn't know. So all of a sudden, it was something that was talked about a little bit. And now with the lack of administration in the school itself, nothing was really ever made transparent to the students or the faculty at the school. It's all of a sudden it was, this is happening right now. We're getting a name change. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, what? What we were told was that the name change had to do with the school being able to get insurance. It was more expensive because then we had the Detroit in our name. And so they wanted to change it to Eastpointe to match the city. In 2010 is when Eastpointe really started accepting schools of choice, which is when a lot of white flight happened out of Eastpointe itself, which then that caused more of a tie with like Detroit, because we got a significant amount of like Detroit students that came in.
African Americans in particular, and other minorities have moved a lot of these spaces that were really lily white 25 or 30 years ago. I think that movement has created probably more harmony than existed in 1994 or 1984.
Back in 2017, the Department of Justice sued the city of Eastpointe, saying that their council elections were not fair to black voters. They settled out of court to keep it from getting too expensive, and now they have something new here. It's called ranked choice voting.
Eastpointe has a black mayor now. Eastpointe, formerly East Detroit, has a millennial African-American mayor.
I used to live on the east side of Detroit, closer to Eastpointe, and my grandmother, when I was a kid, we would come to the suburban area and go to Eastpointe and Roseville and things like that.
I do think that as African-American migration patterns caused Detroiters, African-American Detroiters, to move to other parts of the region, including Macomb County, I think you find that, it takes time, but people begin to get along, which is not to say that there aren't instances of racism that still happen. I mean, I certainly wouldn't say that, but the environment has changed even in my adult lifetime. I'm 53. You have to be at the very least in your 50s to even remember, to even remember East Detroit. I mean, I don't know, I guess I was 21, 22, 23 years old when the issue was being debated, and then ultimately, voters made the decision.
I still feel like there is a connection between Eastpointe and East Detroit, especially for older individuals who still consider Eastpointe East Detroit. Still, when you drive down Gratiot, you will still see things with the name of East Detroit. I know it's like a animal hospital, Detroit Animal Hospital. I feel like people always try to connect the two cities sometimes, especially in the older generations. But I can even say that for like the younger generations, the people who still want to consider that they live in Detroit because they live in Eastpointe, I feel like it'll always kind of have this, this reputation to connect it with the neighboring city. But it's interesting to think about that versus the other cities that share a border with Detroit. I feel like a lot of the spillover from Detroit into Eastpointe is probably a little bit of the reason. Probably because when you look at some of the cities that border Detroit, Eastpointe is the more affordable one to live in. So a lot of people who are trying to get out of Detroit, I see come into Eastpointe. And because that happens, I feel like they bring kind of the Detroit name with them. So it leaves kind of this lasting impression.
I do think that these communities are becoming blacker and browner too. More of these communities. Certainly Eastpointe is an example of that. Probably by the time we get to 2050, the city has an African-American mayor now. It may be a totally, or certainly a super majority African-American city. The region is changing. And I think that Eastpointe will be just another example of that.